Ahuja says that I was the only one who received standing ovation. There were several others, but for different reasons. It's always difficult to stand your ground, but I can say with confidence that wherever I was posted as a judge, whether it was in Delhi, Madras, and for a brief while as Chief Justice in Himachal Pradesh, I did what I could do as a judge. And I have always told my colleagues it's not important where you reach, it is important what you do where you are. Because these are opportunities which are given to us by nature. I believe in divinity by God. And therefore, you must seize the moment and do good to people. So, on that note, Mr. Arun Maghi, President of PUCL, Mr. Ahuja, General Secretary PUCL, my distinguished co-panelists Saeeda ji, Jung Saab, Salil Saab, and dear friends in the audience, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed, and I believe so, my good fortune to be invited to this congregation of individuals who have given their all to public good. Although I have not met most of you before, I have, because of constraints of my office, appreciated your work in public life from afar, which includes especially the stands you all have taken on issues that touch the core of Indian democracy. Optimists amongst us like to say that we are a liberal democracy, while those who are not point out that we have turned into an illiberal, autocratic democracy, if it can be called democracy, once you attach or prefix it with an autocratic strain. It is my guess, though, that we are in between two extremes, but are fast getting to a point where institutions who are duty bound to guardrail democracy are being hollowed out. Many argue that woes of our nation are because we have too much democracy, by which they mean too much freedom. Our forebears, although granted a document, i.e., Constitution of India, which gave precedence to rights over duties, to diversity over monolithism, to inclusivity over marginalization, only to strengthen every sinew of our democratic infrastructure and to empower the common man. The framers of the Constitution gave us freedom of thought and expression, cultural and religious freedom, conferred us with right to equality before law, social and economic justice, and most significantly, provided us with a shield which ensured that no one could be deprived of life without procedure established by law. And yet, today we stand at a crossroad after more than 78 years of independence. The sentient amongst us say that social and cultural fabric of this country is being torn asunder. Hate speech and hate crime are on the rise. Religious and linguistic minorities feel threatened, one could say asphyxiated. Thus, while one is not being prosecuted, and not as yet, for one's religious beliefs, but short of that, what is undermined every day is a person's way of life, how a person dresses, eats, and prays, and lives his life. Not falling in line leads to online and offline harassment, physical violence, discrimination, and open hostility. Hate speech and hate crime are potent weapons in the hands of the oppressor. The victims are mostly religious, caste, and linguistic minorities. The 2024 report of CSOH sets out startling data. There are 3 hate speech events each day which marks an increase of 74.4% over the previous year, i.e., 2023. Apparently, Muslims were targets of hate speech along with Christians, and if you go in terms of percentage, it is about 98.5%. So, for every hate speech event, it seems a particular community is facing the onslaught. Insofar as Christians are concerned, they became targets either explicitly or alongside Muslims to the extent of about 9.9%. Vast majority of hate speech events have occurred, not surprisingly, in bigger and more populous states such as UP, Maharashtra, and Madhya Pradesh. What is significant is the data point which says 6 out of 10 purveyors of hate speech are our good old politicians. My guess is a sizable number of them are legislators. So they frame the law, they violate the law, and they go scot free. That's the story of the state of our country today. Hate speech takes form, as we all know, of dog whistle. They are interestingly called jihad, which is really a war carried out by righteous against what is wrong in our society. So you have interesting jihads: love, land, population, and now vote. There are others which I don't even want to mention because they're so inane and should be wasting our time on this. But when jihad goes awry, it morphs very quickly into hate crime. The only difference between hate speech and hate crime is the one, i.e., hate crime has an element of criminality underlined in the action. Therefore, the question that we must ask ourselves: have we done enough to rein in the beast? In my view, not enough has been done. Judgments delivered on the issue, and there have been a couple of judgments, like Parvasi, judgment of the Supreme Court, and then in a pending writ petition filed by Mr. Ashwani Upadhyay in 2023, there has been an order to which I will refer shortly. They are not being enforced. The victim, instead of the perpetrator, is incarcerated with little hope of being bailed out, mostly on account of circumstances beyond his or her control. The state's procrastination to act on recommendations of the Law Commission report has not helped matters. The Law Commission, in its 267th report, which is of March 2017, amongst others, made recommendations for amending the criminal law regime by suggesting insertion of new provisions in the then prevailing statute. I don't know how many of you know that we had the Indian Penal Code of 1860, which was a British gift to us. And in 2023, we have a new legislation which has replaced the IPC, which is called the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. And therefore, in the IPC, in March of 2017, the Law Commission made recommendations for inserting 2 provisions to deal with hate speech and hate crime. Number section 153C, which prohibited or would have prohibited incitement to hatred, and section 505 capital A for offences such as causing fear, alarm, or provocation to violence in certain cases. I would have thought when you minted a new legislation in 2023 replacing IPC, and we hear every day that we have to do away with colonialism, this recommendation of March 2017 would have been examined and embedded in the new legislation. The earlier provisions in IPC didn't specifically deal with hate speech and hate crime, and therefore the need to do so because the Supreme Court, and incidentally, the person who headed the bench in Parvasi was also the person who was heading the Law Commission, so he knew exactly what path to traverse, which he did commendably. But the state doesn't seem to have taken note of it, even while enacting the 2023 legislation. Therefore, this entire effort came to a knot. The defenders of free speech feel a palpable fear when the state seeks to bring forth regulation to control social media, ostensibly to stem hate speech and hate crime. And this is the other end of the spectrum. You can use the very same event to do exactly the opposite, which is clamp down on speech, which is a valuable fundamental right. We don't have to go far. We are here because we have a fundamental right under Article 91A of the Constitution, which is freedom of speech and expression. So this is the fear of speech defenders. The apprehension is, as I just said, that in the garb of dealing with hate speech, the regulators could clamp down on strident and often seemingly offensive criticism of state policy. That's your right under Article 19(1)(a). When citizens do not agree with state policy, they can voice their dissent, but they can't incite people to violence, which is also an exception to the sedition law. Now, those, and you are very close to the present event, those of you who would be following international news would have noticed that in America there is a robust debate on hate speech and how to tackle it in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination in Utah. Kirk was aligned with the conservatives. His views on issues often, very often, triggered counterpoints. But the important point is, could it, that is, Kirk's views, been settled by his death? My answer is certainly not. His untimely death brought about, in the most dastardly manner, a sad reflection of our times. Why do I bring up Charlie Kirk is, Charlie Kirk represents a point of view in America with which perhaps some of you have been grappling here. So we can continue our debate, we can have a dialogue, discussion, but I am sure the sensible and the saner elements on this side didn't want to see what happened to Charlie Kirk over there. Someone just decided to do away with him, assassinate him. But what is interesting is that Kirk's death has triggered a debate amongst the conservatives in America and the liberals. But both are on the same page and oppose any amendment either to their constitution, that is the First Amendment, by bringing in a law to deal with hate crime and hate speech. So therefore, the jury is still out, i.e. what is the correct way forward. But that said, in my view, saner and sensible view appears to be, which is that hate speech will have to be addressed and dealt with so that it does not spiral into violence, i.e. incite discrimination and hostility, a thought which was expressed by the United Nations General Secretary Antonio Guterres in May 2019. To protect free speech, one would have to bear in mind the difference between what is hurtful and hateful. Please try and appreciate. If by your speech, which is offensive, which also is a right conferred by the Constitution, i.e. you don't have to be nice when you say things, it may hurt you, but it still is not a crime. What is a crime is when you give hateful speech. So there is a degree of latitude available to the person who's speaking or expressing his views. So while the former, however distasteful, is allowed to pass, the latter needs to be tackled and prohibited by setting in motion the criminal law. Now, what are the solutions to a problem which is besetting this country? The possible solutions, according to me, concerning this problem, which is eating into the vitals of our democracy, is, and Jung Saab just mentioned it, educating and creating awareness amongst youngsters, having regard to the fact that we have a demographic dividend in the form of our youth. And while I was in the dais, I was actually telling Zahida ji, is this the right way to engage? Because I know with cell phones, after 15 minutes, everyone extends his hand to his pocket because your attention span is very little. We need to sort of re-engage with new ideas as to how to spread awareness. Do we need to go to universities? Do we need to go to schools? Because we have come to a particular stage in life and we want to leave a robust legacy for our youngsters. So, having you here is great, but you are already convinced. Because you are here, you are already convinced that what is going on is not right. But what you need to do is go out and engage with people who are, in a sense, in a zone where they haven't formed a view or who know nothing about what is happening around them. The other is engaging with religious leaders to explain true tenets of their religion against the backdrop of secularism, which is enumerated in our constitution. I don't find that we engage enough with religious leaders, whether it is the Maulana or a Pandit of a major Hindu shrine or a Jain spiritual leader or even Buddhist or Sikhs, their religious leaders, because they need to tell their disciples, devotees, what is it that secularism means in this country, and that we are together because there is secularism embedded in our constitution. Therefore, that is another way, in my view, that we can take this movement forward. Then, of course, promoting good and responsible speech through social media platforms, print and electronic media, which could be used to spread the message of brotherhood and fraternity. This is one of the most important tools that we have in our hands, because youngsters today are more aligned to social media, and in fact, they don't even visit, or see television programs or read, I'm told, newspapers. Everything is a 5-minute event for them. But we have to engage with them by promoting good speech and good conduct through the very platforms or media that they use. But last and not the least, I wish to bring to the notice of this audience that orders passed by the courts which require authorities to act on issues so that people are empowered in their struggle against injustice need to be circulated, widely circulated. For instance, I was just referring to one judgment, but the more important is an order of the Supreme Court passed in April 2023 in a case titled Ashwani Kumar Upadhyay versus Union of India, where the court directed authorities to register an FIR whenever hate speech and crime comes to their notice without waiting for a complaint to be lodged in that behalf. The order importantly underscores that failure to act will be viewed as contempt of court. Despite such orders, if we do a quick check, nothing really has moved on the ground. Therefore, in a sense, onus lies on organizations like POCL to be more vigilant so that When we have orders such as this, we can seek enforcement. I would conclude, and given the fact that we have more eminent speakers of the dais, who all of you would like to hear and they would like to share their views, with the following well known and oft repeated couplet, which according to me defines India, of Alam Iqbal. मजहब नहीं सिखाता आपस में बैर रखना, हिंदी है हम, वतन है हिंदुस्तान हमारा. Thank you for your patience and jai Hind.